Now, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that this is the perfect Venator. Whenever you're working in LEGO, and especially in Midi-Scale, there's no such thing as perfection, but after 5 months of redesigning and redesigning and redesigning and redesigning, I think that I got this to a pretty good spot. Now, there is a lot to talk about with this Venator, and there absolutely were some design compromises that had to be made. They were unavoidable, but we'll talk about that a little bit later. Let me just start off by saying if you like the look of this Venator and you would be at all interested in building it for yourself, there is a link down in the description to the instructions on Rubricable. Feel free to go and check those out, but first let me show you this Venator. And yes, it is in scale with the invisible hand. It's just a little bit too big, but that's okay because it's also a little bit too small to be perfectly in scale with the Acclamator, so I think it's kind of a happy middle there. It's close enough to either one that you wouldn't really notice. And since it's in scale with the Invisible Hand, it's also about in scale with the Imperial Star Destroyer from 2024, and also the Recusant and Munificent that I have previously built on this channel. Now, in terms of design, there are definitely some fun, well, I wouldn't call them Easter eggs, but definitely some details that I was pretty pleased that I managed to get in there. Like these two grill pieces, while they definitely count as greebling, are also supposed to be somewhat reminiscent of Obi-Wan leaving the Venator in Episode 3. I was also pretty pleased with how well the engines on the Venator ended up matching the engines on the Acclamator. Now, ideally, this would have been done in dark gray because the Venator engines are darker than the Acclamator engines in-universe, but these pieces are very rare in dark gray, and so I decided to just roll with it. And as for this rear section here, it is supposed to taper off a little bit, and in order to at least allude to that, I put some brackets on the side up here closer to the hull of the ship to kind of give it that illusion of shrinkage. There's definitely a better word for that, but it's not coming to me right now. And of course, while there is tons of detail packed in on the top, I have never been one to skimp out on the bottom. The bottoms of ships are sometimes my favorite part of the ship, not gonna lie, and this definitely turned out pretty good. The hangar bay there is certainly a little bit too wide, but that's just for the sake of the stand, and otherwise, I think that the bottom turned out fantastic, if not a little bit better than the top. Because, at the very least, the aesthetics of the bottom does not at all depend on my ability to correctly apply circular stickers. Now, as important as I find the underside of a ship to be, stability definitely takes the cake for importance. And I think that this Venator is pretty structurally sound. Now, if you have built either my Recusant or my Munificent, this definitely isn't on the same level as those two. I would honestly feel quite comfortable giving my Munificent to a 5-year-old if they wanted to play with it. But this one, probably not. Though, as you can see, it is still pretty durable. I am being pretty rough with it, and it is holding up just fine. It has some really good swooshability, and you can hold the model from almost anywhere. There are definitely some places that you don't want to pick it up from, but that is the case with any LEGO model that you build, so I think that that's okay. Now, if you are being a little bit more rough with it, like I just was, you might run into the problem where the plates that the turrets are attached to pop off a little bit, but if this is just going to be a display model for you, or if you swoosh it around like a normal person, then this shouldn't be much of a problem. Now, before I start talking about design compromises, I do just want to make mention of the stand and thank everybody who suggested this solution when I mentioned that I was having troubles with the stand for the inverted plates like this. I really like that idea, and it actually works pretty great. Now, you definitely don't want to pick it up by the stand, but it certainly does its job of keeping the Venator in place. Now, allow me to talk to you about some of the design compromises that had to be made. The biggest one definitely being the backside here. It does look a little bit chunky, but that is for a very good reason. There was absolutely no way to get the correct number of stripes without using a snot technique for the sides here. Usually I prioritize shape over color, but in this particular instance, I think that the stripes are just too important to the aesthetic of the Venator, and this was the only way to get them to work. If you are somebody who prioritizes shape over color, then there is no short supply of really fantastic options out there. But since this only looks funky from one angle and the stripes just look so good from every single other angle, I think that it was well worth it. Chunkiness, gaps, and all, because those stripes really just do bring this whole thing together. One other thing that I wasn't super pleased with is the fact that I had to put these ingot pieces here, but I kind of had to do that if I wanted to cover up the more unsightly structural connections. But it is certainly nowhere near as bad as the compromise that I had to make in the back with the chunkiness. Overall, though, I'm pretty happy with how this turned out. I definitely think that my Munificent is still the best model that I've made to date. And if you want to check out a more in-depth look at that or my Recusant build, then you can do so by clicking on one of the end screen videos. There is definitely a lot more that I would like to talk about and address with this Venator, but I also know that audience retention is kind of an important metric on a YouTube video, so I'm just going to cut it off here. Go ahead and check out the link in the description if you're interested in instructions, and thank you for watching.